Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of Beyond the Jersey. Today, with me, I have a baseball player.
I'm Blaine Griffin, junior baseball player.
Okay, today's episode, it's very windy out today, but we're going to make it work. Today's episode is about pressure and performance, and we'll be talking about the mental side of baseball. So, today's theme, we're really focusing on how athletes handle performance anxiety, slumps, and overall just like mental toughness around their sport. So, Blaine, as you know, I feel like baseball is kind of like a sport built on failure, I guess you could say. I think a lot of sports are built on that. It's really hard with like mental toughness and such. So could you touch a little bit on how you feel baseball has impacted you the most?
So I used to play like high school. I played all the positions. I'm just a pitcher now. So as a pitcher, it's a little less based on failure. It's easier to fail because you're kind of by yourself up there. It almost turns into an individual game. Um, because my performance directly affects the team. Um, as a position player, like as a hitter, people get paid millions to fail 7 out of 10 times and like win MVP like that. But as a pitcher, I feel like if I fail, the whole team is affected by just my performance, and so like it's really tough to just kind of have a short term memory is what all my coaches always told me to have. But I could throw a pitch like a mistake pitch and give up a 450-foot bomb, and now the team's down a run at least, and that's all on me. So, just kind of being tough up there and knowing that, I mean, you got to make every pitch count, and mistakes kind of just have to be thrown away and dealt with later.
Nice. So kind of talking more of like the right before your game aspect. So have you experienced any mental blocks or anxiety directly before a game? Like you're about to go on the pitch. Was there anything specific that you did to help you?
Um, uh, Personally, like I'm a man of faith. Uh, I know last year I've had some rough spots in my career, my sophomore year, and I leaned heavily on just praying before a game and that kind of stuff. Even last year, we went through Bible studies and stuff before a game, and I feel like that helped a lot because I used to be, down some caffeine, listen to like rap music, rock music, and just get fired up and kind of ignore all those, which I still do. But I feel like just it's a lot easier to perform when you're calm than all amped up, especially when you make a mistake. It's very easy to tumble when you're all amped up.
Great. So, a lot of like within sports, we face a lot of like bad performances and such, especially in like the pitcher point of view. I feel like that's like one position, and like yeah, it rotates, but like that's like a spot where it's like it's a really hard spot to be in. And so, like, could you shed some light on some like strategies or routines you use to stay confident, especially after a bad performance?
Especially after a bad performance. Like for example, last year we played Lynchburg, who year before last they won, or 2 years ago they won the national championship, and we went in and played them last year. They were like ranked 5 in the nation or something, and I just blew it, like completely sucked. And I got the ball back after that, and definitely some anxiety going on the mound after that, and I feel like definitely affected the rest of my season. But I feel like when you realize, especially as a pitcher, like I said, hitters fail a lot, and it's very hard to hit, especially at a collegiate level. So just remembering that kind of thing, it's like my job is to make their job hard, and remembering that I have the advantage at all times really helps on the mound.
Kind of going into the aspect, I want to touch on how mental health is really perceived within specifically men's sports. We talked about this last episode about how men can maybe be perceived differently within mental health because they might seem like they need to put on this hard exterior and not really show that they are going through tough times. So, how would you say mental health is perceived in baseball specifically compared to more of like players' physical health? Because as you know, players get hurt and like they're attended to and they want to get healed as quickly as possible to get back out there. So, how would you say the comparison between mental and physical health is?
Personally, I definitely focus more on my physical health. Um, I've never been a very like you know I've never been very anxious person or anything like that, and kind of like how you just said, I feel like I've always just put on like a tough act and that kind of thing. But I feel like there's especially as a pitcher. I mean, we put a lot of stress on our bodies, unnatural force like elbow, shoulder, that kind of stuff, and that's mainly the focus. And I feel like mental health definitely gets neglected um, all the time.
Kind of to go off of that before I like move on to the next thing. So you do admit that like mental health is neglected a lot, which I we have touched on before. Um, Xavier in our last episode touched on ways that he has been able to help and realize that he is struggling. And so, what would you say the best thing is for people that may be watching, going through the same thing you are, specifically, especially in baseball? What are some ways you would recommend to kind of help?
Definitely realizing that it's just a game and remembering that. I mean, I had fun. I've had fun playing baseball my entire life, and recognizing, I think one thing we touch on a lot, at least in my baseball Bible study, we talk about recognizing the blesser, not the blessing, and how we're blessed every time we step on the field. And if you have a bad outing, it doesn't define who you are. Um, just focusing on the opportunity, not the result, and taking every opportunity as it is, and not focusing as much on results, like mentally at least. Because I mean, if you have a bad outing and then just let that can tumble into you know ending career. I've seen guys go out um and like just quit because they can't get over the hump, and I feel like a lot of that has to do with the mental side of things for sure.
So, as you touched on, like a lot of people, they just struggle to the point where they just feel like they can't go on. Which sometimes that is the path that some people need to take, and other times there are ways that can help. So, for your team in particular, or maybe other teams you've been a part of in the past, how open are your players and your coaches about stress, burnout, and pressure?
Personally, I've always been told pressure is a privilege, which I fully believe in. But at the same time, if you take too much of that pressure upon yourself, there's definitely, I mean, too much pressure is, they say pressure makes diamonds, but I mean, diamonds crack. But it's definitely, you have to, there's a certain point you have to realize, like I said, it's just a game and it shouldn't affect beyond the field at least. And it's definitely hard to do that. I mean, I wake up, sleep, it's always baseball on my mind. So coming off like a bad outing, it's really hard to bounce back, and it can like affect my whole week. I've personally felt that, definitely, especially last season. But just realizing that it's a game and having fun and enjoying the ride, I feel like is big, has helped me a lot.
To kind of switch the perspectives, have you ever had to help a teammate out who was struggling mentally, and if so, like how what did you do to help
I
them?
feel like a big thing is just like letting people know that you're there, because there's definitely been times. I mean, last year have a bad outing and I just isolate myself, go to the gym, go on a run, just like stay to myself. And honestly, I feel like that's the worst thing to do, because when you're by yourself, you're alone with your thoughts. You just harp on them, harp on your performance, that kind of thing, and that definitely doesn't help. And I feel like just letting people know that you're there for them. I've been there a couple times where I have to, go to a buddy's house, or just like spend time with them. Take your mind off your sport, go do something that you enjoy, and I feel like that's a big part of just being there for each other and letting them know that you're there for them.
So you kind of touched a little bit on this, but I want to talk more about like identity within your sport. So how would you say in within baseball, how big of a part of it is your identity? Because as we know, like our sport is our life, especially when in college, the collegiate level, all 4 years, we take pride in like that is our sport. We want to give the best performance possible. So Would you say it has taken over your identity, or what part of it is? How have you been able to help with that? Just kind of.
Definitely, like coming out of high school, going into college, it's workload gets bigger. I mean, we're in the fall off season right now, but I mean, we live 3 times a week. We're at the field every day, so it is kind of hard to find your identity in something else. And I mean, me and my buddy have talked about it before. Like, if someone asked me right now, if I had to give an introduction, baseball is probably the first thing I'm gonna say. But I feel like finding joy in other things and you know giving yourself that mental capacity to focus on something else other than your sport is big. And because baseball, um, especially baseball, I mean, I could get hurt tomorrow and my career is done, and it's hard to kind of wrap your head around, but you have to like find an identity for yourself outside of your sport, and that makes your identity in your sport a lot easier to handle.
Yeah, that was very good. Like, as we kind of touched on, like, your sport is not all of you. It might seem like that. You might sometimes want it to be just because you've put in all this work and you want to see the results you want to see. But it's really important that to understand that you are something outside of your sport, and also to understand that like when your career is done, you have to focus on something else. Like, it's not your entire life, and you can still focus on it as like a side thing, but it's really important to understand that it's not your entire self, and it will come to an end, and that is sad, but enjoying it while you're in it is really important. So as you kind of touched on, shifting into college, it's a whole different mindset, it's a whole different ball game. There's so many different factors compared to when you're just like in high school or growing up. So how would you say your mental health has kind of shifted or changed since coming into college?
Definitely been like a roller coaster. um, I first got here, and in high school, school was kind of first, and I thought when I got to college, I needed to put baseball first if I really wanted to succeed, and that led to me lacking in other parts of my life, education, that kind of thing, and like especially freshman year, struggled really hard in the classroom because I was so focused on baseball, and I think that helped me in the long run, because when you get to that spot where you're like, I can't even play because of my grades or my attendance at class and that kind of thing, um, you realize what's really important, and you kind of get a priority check, and that's definitely helped me separate baseball from the rest of my life, um, and figuring out what I want to do past baseball and being able to focus on that now and know that baseball isn't the end all be all.
Yeah, I love that. So, as we've kind of touched on in previous episodes, we've kind of talked about how academics can be majorly impacted with your sport, especially when you're so focused on wanting to succeed in your sport. So, really making sure that you're reaching out to people, using your resources, and making sure that you are focusing on academics as well. Because as we've talked about, when you go into college, you feel like it switches from student athlete to athlete student. I have been there. I think a lot of people can attest to that. So really focusing on your priorities, and because if you aren't a great student, you can't be a great athlete. So really balancing the two. One last thing I want to touch on is: do you have any message you would like to give other fellow male athletes that may be watching to hear about taking care of themselves mentally? What are some things that you would say to them?
I would definitely say finding something you love outside of your sport. Um, One thing that's really helped me is, I mean, like I said earlier, I'm a devoted Christian, and it's very easy to lose that and lose that passion for your sport. Um, and I feel like it's honestly put me more on fire, for my sport, finding passion in something else and realizing that you can be focused on two things at once, and letting that take, when you have a bad outing or a bad practice. Personally, I like to just, dive into the word and, give myself fellowship with my buddies, and, just talk and about things that are bigger than baseball.
So it's important to have a community of people that you can reach out to or you can be a part of, that can relate with you. Thank you guys so much for joining this episode. Thank you, Blaine, for joining us and giving your input. I hope you guys enjoyed the new setting. Who knows what will happen next? Next week for episode 4, we have another women's lacrosse player joining us to give her touch on her story within mental health. Thanks again so much for joining us. Beyond the Jersey, I'm Emily Ransom, and I'll see you guys next time.